Welcome to the POMcast with Stephen Willis. Now we're going to do things a little different. We are going to provide an honest look at Ole Miss athletics for the fan, by the fan, and of the fan. That is what we do. Hell be to me. I'm just kidding. Tune in for some Ole Miss sports news. We're going to give it to you straight. Yeah, right now. The POMcast starts now. It happens now. Holy cow. Listen to me. It's starting. Well, it's going to start right about now. Good morning, and welcome back to the POMcast. I am your host, Stephen Willis, from the palatial Central Florida studios. I'm very excited that you all are joining us, and I hope your weekend was great. Who it wasn't great for was Kermit Davis losing the game to LSU this weekend, and the basic time off. We're going to take this first segment to basically talk about why I shut down Thursday and Friday of last week and what that exactly means. We're going to continue our exit interviews. We're going to talk about the wide receiver position, and we're going to talk a little bit about maybe the struggles in basketball. We'll get to that maybe in segment 3. We might talk about the violent insurrection. Who knows? We're going to go by the seat of our pants through this show. Now, Ole Miss is in a very unique position in football. They got all the momentum in the world. They're working. They got 1 or 2 recruits that they're trying to sign in February. But overall, they're pretty much done. They're going to hit the transfer market shortly. And once we get on the ground in Oxford and Chris starts doing his thing, we'll be able to report more readily what's going on in Oxford. So stick around from that. But again, we're actually in the palatial Central Florida studios, not in an adjoining room like we have been. We're actually in it. We're going to, over the next week or so, paint the wall with our green screen paint and get it ready to go for video. We got the lights coming tomorrow. The audio board's already here. And we'll start setting up our studio over the course of January, and sometime, hopefully this week, maybe next week, we get to buy the camera and the hardware for the podcast. That's pretty cool. And like I said, it's not going to look like anything that is currently on the air. It's going to be a treat for Ole Miss fans, and it's really going to be the only podcast you need to watch if you're an Ole Miss fan. It's going to be pretty cool. And it's definitely not going to look like a Wayne's World production. But the reason we shut down this week, the violent insurrection, the terrorist attack at the Capitol, we didn't want to take away from people having to think about what happened. We didn't want any justification of why it was the right thing to do for anybody. We didn't want anything. We want it to be what it was, and that is a terrorist attack where they attacked the Capitol, where number 2, number 3, and number 4 were the last line was in the Capitol and at risk during the insurrection. The purpose of it was to kill them. They had zip ties. It was all planned. They talked about, you overheard, where's Pence? They wanted to hang him on the Capitol grounds. This was not a protest. Anybody that says anything otherwise or minimalizes it to the slightest bit is wrong. They're complicit. And everybody that took part is going to get caught. Let me tell you, whenever I was at Fort Meade, you can hear all the veteran stuff during the podcast. You know where I stand on this. But when I was at Fort Meade in A School, we were on the same base as NSA. Yeah, that NSA. And if you pointed a camera in the general direction of NSA, two men in black suits would come talk to you for an afternoon to make sure that you weren't a threat. And why were you trying to photograph NSA? Couldn't tell where the cameras are. It was out in the woods, everything, what's going on. I tell you that to tell you this. Every step they took inside the Capitol and outside the Capitol was on video. Everything they did was known, is known. And arrests are going to be made in a hurry on this one because of all the video evidence of doing that. And this is actually the best part of the whole thing to me. Thanks to President Trump signing an executive order in order to combat Antifa and Black Lives Matter protests and things like that, every one of them inside is looking at 10 years minimum. One step inside, 10 years minimum. So it might be a situation where the coup that he tried to launch ends up with mass arrest. And I mean, yeah. But that's all I'm going to say about that. You came here for Ole Miss podcast. This is the POMcast. I'm Stephen Willis. You can, of course, follow us online at Twitter at the Stephen Willis or at Ole Positively. You can follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/POMcast. You can catch us on YouTube by subscribing to our channel at Positively Ole Miss. There's extras besides POMcast stuff on there, by the way. And we're on Twitch at Positively Ole Miss, all one word. If audio is more of your thing, you can catch us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio, and Pandora. We're all there for you to listen to. We're on smaller podcatchers as well, but you're not really going to... I'm not going to name them all because I'd be here all day. But anyway... that is what we're looking for. That's a brief description of where we stand as a podcast. And when we come back, segment 2, we're going to get back into it. Excerpt interviews, wide receiver, right here on the POMcast. Stephen Willis.
Only 10% of us get enough daily exercise.
And that number is dropping.
Nearly 30% of us are overweight or obese.
We spend 6 hours a day in front of a screen.
As a result, we now have a shorter life expectancy than our parents.
But give us the right start in sports, and we'll never stop.
Learn how at active4life.ca.
Hey, this is Stephen Willis from Positively Ole Miss. We're almost done with this break. We'll be back with good information quite soon.
The military has been in every generation of my family, and so has VA. It wasn't easy for my dad after Vietnam, but VA helped him and my mom get the home they'd always wanted. My grandpa's been coming to VA since World War II. They even helped him lay to rest one of his battle buddies from Normandy. And me, I followed in their footsteps and served with pride. And now that I'm out of the military, the GI Bill's helping me with school. Every generation of my family has served, and VA has served us all.
POMcast, Stephen Willis, welcome back. Welcome back. Sitting here, we're going to talk about some exit interviews. What a wide receiver play this season. We're going to probably take this whole segment on it. It's going to be pretty great. It's going to be really great. The strength of the team. Wide receiver Elijah Moore had 86 catches this year. The one thing we're going to look at, they were explosive and they were productive all year. There were multiple touchdowns scored from over 80 yards out through the air. They were explosive. And the only problem I have with that position group is that Jonathan Mingo hasn't emerged as the guy yet. We were hoping during the Outback Bowl that it would be his, but it turned out to be Dontario Drummond stepping up and becoming the guy. But Jonathan Mingo did not. I guess not that there's anything wrong with that, but you just want him to grow into that position. We've been waiting all season for him to grow into that position. Anyway, I'm going to give the position group an A-. They're going to finish up as tops of any position group. And they caught the ball. They were consistent. I mean, there's only one player that you want more, but it's not that he was bad. It's more along the fact that he just wasn't what we expected at this point. But Elijah Moore, that was obvious. He was spectacular. He was a finalist for the Bluntnikoff Award. That was expected. Kenny Yeboah had a fantastic year. He started out strong, and then it kind of veered away from him towards the end. I get that. But he had a fantastic year. Yes, tight ends are included in the wide receivers, by the way. Braylon Sanders, once he got healthy at the end of the year, emerged as a deep threat and then immediately got hurt. But he's coming back for next year. Dontario Drummond is coming back for next year to go with Jonathan Mingo. That's basically our whole receiving core. And in recruiting, just so you know, replacing Elijah Moore is John Rice Plumlee, who had a fantastic bowl game in the slot and made some really tough catches. People are going to give him grief for that first drop, but that was a hard catch, and the nerves of playing that position. It was especially a hard first catch. I mean, by the end of the game, he probably would have pulled that in. I mean, the signs are that he would pull that in. So that's one position. If you look at recruiting, Braylon Brown, J.J. Henry, Brandon Buckhalter, we have some depth coming at that position. And all wide receiver, whether outside, inside, or tight end, there's people coming. I think his name is Hudson Wolf, the kid from Tennessee, the tight end. He's up there in the top 5, top 6 in Tennessee. Player overall, not tight end. He's a heck of a player and has a chance to be really, really special. But that's where we're looking at the wide receiver. I'm sorry for such a rosy outlook because those are the guys. And now, we also need to look at it like this. Like Braylon Sanders and Elijah Moore were products of the old NWO thing. Recruiting has not been a problem for them. Before them was AK and DJ, or DK, and before them was Laquan Treadwell, and then before them was Dante Moncrief. We've always, for the last 10, 15 years, had a good wide receiver in the lineup. We can recruit them. It becomes normal for a good wide receiver to look at us because of our history of developing wide receivers, and they kind of become the dude. I mean, we talk about those freeze teams, but when they went to the Sugar Bowl, they had Laquan Treadwell, Cody Core, both of them played in the league. Um, Evan Ingram played in the league. Vince Sanders was a heck of a college wide receiver. He might not have played in the league, but he was a heck of a college wide receiver. So we have a tradition built of being able to take those guys and move to the next level. And that's something that Ole Miss can be proud of, because there's an area to hang their hat. Because in the last probably 5 years of the abyss that we've been going through, I mean, we dropped off, not necessarily at talent, but at overall record. I mean, through the NCAA and all that, it was like getting your teeth pulled. But that's all over, and momentum's building now, finally. It's been 5 years. And the position group that it starts with is right there. I mean, if Elijah Moore wasn't recruited by Phil Longo or whatever in 2018, he came in the same class as Matt Corral, we would not legitimately be in the position we are in now. So all that credit, all that hope, really started with that room and that reputation built from that room. There'd be a far greater rebuild if those players did not exist. That's all I'm saying. And they deserve the credit for being there and for doing that. And it's pretty cool. But Elijah Moore is going to be catching passes on Sundays, just like AJ and just like DK and just like Raquan Treadwell, just like Evan Ingram. It's a position group that we have a history of putting people in the league, and that's what they want. Now, if they do anything once they get there, the whole point is getting them to the league. So we need Elijah Moore to be drafted relatively high. We need Kenny Yeboah to be drafted as well, because we have a nice little train. If he does and makes a team, that'll be 3 Ole Miss tight ends on NFL rosters next year. There's a history of putting those players in the league, and that's something you can recruit to. And here shortly, like after next year when Jerry and Ely goes to the league, that's 2 running backs that'll be in the league. So, I mean, you can see they're building it up, and they're building the brand. And each player puts another block on there, and eventually you're up there where you can be counted on. And that's how you win recruiting battles, because that's what they want. There's a whole bunch of people out there that especially over the last 4 years, especially when it comes to college recruiting, basically equates it to doing horrible things as a way of them justifying probably their belief that they should do horrible things themselves in recruiting. And by that, I mean buying players. Now, that probably does happen at the high end. I'm not saying it's not. But once you get to the lower levels, and probably not too far down the lower levels, it just doesn't happen. It's all recruiting. You can take that from somebody that's worked in that building for 3 years. Everybody wants us to be the program. It's not the program. I mean, we're not Texas State from necessary roughness. We're not Eastern State University from the program. It's not how that works. People are just trying to use that as a justification for bad behavior. But there is a little bit of it that happens, but it doesn't happen as much as you think. There are some prospects with their hand out, but just because you lose a prospect doesn't mean they had their hand out. A lot of it's just an excuse. It's, oh, we lost a guy. He must be being bought. He must have went to the highest bidder. And the problem is, if you think that everybody does that and you so run into play the game, then you turn into the crooked program and ended up on probation. Because they expect that to happen and they expect everybody to do that. They're not all doing that. I mean, at the moment, they're just not all doing that. But the higher level kids, yeah, you pretty much have to, unless they're not interested in money and they are interested in something else. It all depends on the priority of the kid. So just keep a heads up on that. Don't bury your head in the sand, and quit whining and quit making excuses if something goes wrong. And just work towards building the program at a better level than it was before. And one way we can do that is continuing the wide receiver room. Once Ole Miss has a set reputation, which it does at the moment, of putting wide receivers and tight ends in the league, it's easier to get the next group, because at the end of the day, they're not worried. A recruit, no matter what you say, they're not worried about $5,000. They're just not. They're worried about getting to the league. And if you can do that and you have a track record of doing that, it gets easier to recruit high-level players like J.J. Henry and Braylon Brown, Brandon Buckhalter. They want to come play for you because of that. And that's kind of how that is set up in recruiting. Anyways, when we come back, I think we're going to do a little smorgasbord. Stephen Willis, POMcast. Stick around.
You want to answer that, don't you? I bet it's just killing you seeing the soft glow just inches away. Someone wants to tell you something or ask you something. Oh, come on, answer it already! Just so we're clear, that wasn't my fault. Next time, ignore your inner voice. Don't text and drive. A message from Florida's trusted choice independent insurance agents.
Hey, this is Stephen Willis. I just want you to stick around a little longer. We're going to get back to the podcast right after these messages.
Tonight, nearly 40,000 veterans across the country are homeless. These men and women have pledged to serve our nation, and now we must serve them. Landlords across the country have helped make significant progress in reducing veteran homelessness by making housing available, but there is more that we can do to bring our veterans home. Visit www.va.gov/homeless to see how you can get involved. And if you are a veteran and you are experiencing homelessness, please call 877-4AID-VET. Thank you.
POMcast, Stephen Willis, thank you so much for joining us. We're back after a short hiatus out of respect for the brave congressmen and women that faced down a terrorist attack on Wednesday. We took a couple of days off out of respect to them. As you can tell from my podcast, that was always going to be our position, and it will continue to be our position. People doing that and is difficult. It's hard to imagine, but it did happen. Those players or those people are currently being rounded up. There's a nationwide manhunt for participants, and they will probably never sleep well again. And that is the only thing that gives me peace, is knowing that. And the Capitol Police officers that, like Eugene Goodman, that faced down a whole mob and led the mob away from the Senate when he was just one person against dozens. True hero of the day. If he'd have went the other way and ran away and didn't do his job, there's a chance that all three could have been in danger in the line of succession, and the coup could have worked. But it did not. But anyway, I want to talk. Ole Miss lost to LSU this weekend, and that's not necessarily a story, but everybody's freaking out about being 1-2. And I understand. I get it. I mean, you don't want to be 1-2, but let's not overthink this, overdo this, because pay sites you're going to hear all the time is filled with people that want a coaching search. They want coaches to lose their job because that's when they can make money. Everything to them is about money. And I'd love to hear them say that that wasn't the case. But secretly, they want a coaching search. So they're going to overreact over a 1-2 COVID season basketball record inside the conference, where you lost to Alabama, who beat Tennessee, and you lost to LSU, which I think they're doing pretty well as well. So it's early in the year. There's a long way to go in the college basketball season. I admit that in the aftermath of what happened, I did not watch a college basketball game this weekend. I had it on NFL and CNN to see what was going on. But that's kind of where we stand. My leg's going to sleep. It's kind of funny. But that's kind of where we stand at the moment. And when it comes to basketball, we need to be patient. I mean, we did a bunch of transfers and we got a bunch of young players. Next year we have Grant Slatton, Deshaun Ruffin, and I can't remember the other player's name, but he's going off for 35, 36 a night to match with Matt Murrell next season. And it's just a growth thing. And they play great defense, and they're just missing an outside shooter. Their shots aren't falling at the moment. So you try to improve, you do the best you can, and by the end of the season, they're probably going to find what works. Their inside game is pretty good, but you're playing against long teams. I mean, you might be longer than you've ever been, but you're playing against two teams that have been long for a couple of years now. And that kind of matters. There's a little bit of flow. And it's important to know whenever teams play the stupid analytical game of three-pointers and layups like Alabama is definitely doing, you need to be careful because analytics show that is a way that is beneficial for points per trip during a game. So the mid-range game, although it looks good, and the inside game, although it looks good, you might be trading a 3 for a 2. Next year with Grant Slatton, Deshaun Ruffin, you have Matt Murrell, there's a chance that stops. And we become more 3 reliant. But as it stands now, we're not. We're a mid-range team. We're a low-post team. While terrific to watch, we're struggling outside the arc at the moment. And until that is a true threat, we're not going to unlock the potential of what this team can be. There's really good players on this team. There just is. But you're not going to unlock the team until that weapon gets unleashed. Some nights it's great, some nights they struggle. And it's just not as consistently there. But the teams that play the analytical games, if the threes aren't falling, you're screwed. So, I mean, it's kind of pick your poison. If they are hitting, you're going to do all right. But if they're not falling, you kind of have to deal with that. And it's just the direction that basketball has gone in. I've preached against it for many shows. It's not a pleasing product to watch. And you're just going down a road for the sake of going down it. You're trying to find that easiest way to a W. Like a work smarter, not harder situation. Doesn't look good on the eyes, but what can you do? Anyway, Stephen Willis, POMcast, thank you for listening today. We'll see you tomorrow.